Okay, so I've prepared a little talk on upeksha, equanimity, and Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Teachings on Love, begins with the Four Immeasurables. And for love to be true love, it must contain qualities of compassion, joy, and equanimity. For compassion to be true compassion, it has to have joy, love, and equanimity. True joy has to contain love, compassion, and equanimity. And true equanimity has to carry love, compassion, and joy. And this is the interbeing nature of the Four Immeasurables, that they exist together and are not separate. Found that a nice reflection to note, because sometimes one's present and not the others. And it's really beautiful to reflect on rounding it out. Upeksha means equanimity, non-attachment, non-discrimination, even-mindedness, and embodies a quality of letting go. With equanimity, we have the ability to climb the mountain and look over the whole situation and not be bound by one side or the other. We practice equanimity to expand our feelings of warm, caring connection to all beings, equally strong for everyone. The far enemy of equanimity are the states of attraction and aversion, or preference. If we feel preference for some people over others, we are not practicing equanimity. And if we are annoyed, angered, or repulsed by some people, then we're obviously not practicing equanimity. Of course, we all feel preferences for some people over others. We feel attraction and love for some and aversion for others. Preferences are formed out of our habitual patterns, and we take up practice to free ourselves from these patterns. So it's a process. It's not where we are meant to be already necessarily. When functioning from within our habituated patterns of preference, the immeasurables are blocked. When we embody the immeasurables, we are free from the habituated patterns. So many have mistaken equanimity for indifference, and indifference is the near enemy of equanimity. And if you've ever been able to observe yourself being indifferent, you've probably noticed that you are in a state of dullness, passivity, and unresponsiveness, void of the love, joy, and compassion. And though indifference likes to masquerade as equanimity, it actually serves to separate us from the objects of our indifference rather than join us in strong feelings of love. Thich Nhat Hanh says, "I don't care" is not the same as "I care deeply, equally, and inclusively." And yet I know that indifference is a very strong defense pattern that we all have developed to function and not feel overwhelmed and hurt and many other things. So this is an invitation to be in process of ever-growing awareness. Equanimity is the wisdom of equality, the ability to see everyone as equal. And that includes not discriminating between ourselves and others. As long as we see ourselves as the one who loves and the other as the one who is loved, or as long as we value ourselves more or less than others, or see ourselves as different from others, we are not living in equanimity. When we shed the patterns of discrimination and prejudice, we remove boundaries between ourselves and others, caring as much for their well-being as for our own. And even within conflict, when we care deeply about a particular outcome, equanimity allows us to remain impartial and be able to understand both sides. We have to put ourselves into the other person's skin and become one with them if we want to understand and truly love them. And I remember a moment when this first dawned on me. It came around the phrase that I've heard so many people say, and I've probably said many times, if I were you, I would ... And for some reason, one moment, that phrase came up and I realized that if I were them, I would be acting exactly like they're acting. That my life would have formed me exactly how their life had formed them. And it was this real moment of insight that allowed me to kind of psychically sense into what had actually brought them to this moment in their life. And that is like an example of the compassion coming in. And so the wonder at how we are each formed opened me to love and to joy. And I also understood the futility of the impulse to like take how I'm formed and place it on another person's life and expect them to be living as if they were me. And so I also understand that when we reside in equanimity, we are able to also expand one another's points of view from our own experiences. There can actually be an exchange where we bring vision to each other's blind spots. And this is actually the gift that arises out of being present in equanimity. And Thich Nhat Hanh talked about how without equanimity, love often becomes possessive. We fall into living to satisfy ourselves by limiting and using those we say we love, using them to help us fulfill our own lives, without taking the time to understand the other person's aspirations, needs, and difficulties. And this type of love robs others of their liberty, or can. Equanimity allows us to preserve our own freedom within relationship and the freedom of those we love simultaneously. No longer run by permutations of attraction, aversion, and indifference, we experience the wonderfully enlivening and intimate aspects of interbeing. And in Ken MacLeod's book, he spoke about how a 12th century teacher, Chikawa Yeshe Dorje, described 3 challenges in spiritual practice. The first is to recognize a reactive emotional pattern within ourselves. The second is to develop a way of working on it. And the third is to work on that pattern until it collapses. So the first phase of the practice is to become aware of the underlying feelings that block the blossoming of the immeasurables in our lives. And once the block has been exposed to our attention, then it's often good to notice the times that you are able to experience the immeasurable, moments when you are living outside of the pattern, because we all have both. To strengthen equanimity, he suggests beginning your practice by focusing on people and circumstances which don't arouse the strong feelings of attraction, indifference, or aversion. And then to gradually progress towards finding equanimity with those who do arouse those feelings. And the goal is to gradually extend each immeasurable to all beings and all situations. And in his book, Wake Up to Your Life, Ken MacLeod offers specific meditations to support this process of expanding the immeasurables. He takes each one and gives specific meditation to work with it.